Okay. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I just want to organize my things here. Um, yes, I think, as you were mentioning, Brother Anthony, I was just remembering how such a loving soul had such love for God too, that at his last moments, he must have definitely flown into Baba's arms. And I was sitting here also remembering how much I love Baba and what I've done over the years to increase that love. I was remembering, I just wrote down a few thoughts this morning, and the first thing that came to me was the first time I met Baba. I'd come into Gyani, London in August in 1975, and I was on my way back to Australia in November of 1975. And I stopped over in Madhuban. The beginning of November was Diwali time. So first of all, I was struck by all of the lights everywhere, and such a colourful celebration that Diwali is. It's also a special time for Dadiji. But at that time, I was the only foreigner in Madhuban, and one of the first foreigners to actually reach Madhuban. I think Charlie came a month later to Madhuban in December, but I was already there in November. And I stayed there for a week. And I remember they said to me to go and sit in Bubba's room. So I said, okay. And the Bubba's room in those days was very small. Was how his room was in terms of size. It was just a normal bedroom size. So afterwards, they broke down two back walls to make it 3 times bigger. In the back of there used to be the fruit department, and so I was in this small room. It's just a normal sized bedroom for one person. There was a bathroom off to the side. That's where Brahma Baba stayed. And so the things, when I got there, the things were still pretty much the same as they had been when Brahma Baba was around, which was only 6 years earlier, even less, 5 years and a bit earlier. And I just sat in front of the picture of Baba, which is actually, as far as I can remember, it's the same picture. Maybe they've changed it, but it's the same photo of Brahma Baba seated. And I was just sitting there. They said, and I'd not done this in London, I didn't have much this practice to sit in Baba's room. In fact, I hadn't done the course even when I went to Madhuban. I just picked up things. I'd started, first day I went to the centre, I went straight into the Murli, and I just started to pick up things along the way. And I never missed the Murli anyway, so it was my first big love, this Gyan. But then I was sitting in Baba's room, and it seemed like, and until today, actually, you sit there, it seems like the picture of Baba is alive. That actually Baba was sitting there. Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba together, Bapdada, were sitting there, and they were just giving such loving drishti to me, and there was such a sense of welcome. And I was thinking, wow, I feel, I've just been taken into this family, and Bapdada were giving so much loving drishti and I was in the room, and as I said, there were not many in Madhuban at the time, and I was sitting there alone. It was the daytime. There was no one else sitting there, and I was just in front of the picture, just being enveloped in Baba's love, being welcomed into the Brahmin family. And again, I had the first experience of actually heart-to-heart conversation. I'd never done it before. And I guess that's probably, if you want to increase your love for Baba, you must definitely have conversations with him. Many times we think yoga is just to remember this source of peace and love and bliss. It is. I connect with the source. I connect with Baba's qualities. But to connect with Baba as a person, or the supreme person, I have to do that through the conversation. And so this was the first experience I had of heart-to-heart conversation with Baba. Well, it was so lovely. And Baba was actually coming, I think, the day after, one day later, was the time for Baba to come. And so I got everything ready. People got themselves ready. And Baba came in the meditation hall, that first Morley. And that Morley was in early November 1975. I've subsequently looked it up, and it was exactly a Morley in the beginning of November 75, in which Baba was talking about the moths and how there are three types of moths: the ones that sort of jump onto the flame, the ones that fly around and around but don't have the courage to jump onto the flame, and the ones that come and do a few rounds and then go away again, and after some time come back and do a few more rounds and then go away again. So Baba was asking us what sort of moth we were. And of course, all of us were feeling, yes, I have to be the number one quality moth. And Baba said something which was similar to what the experience that I had in Baba's room. It's like, you have been wandering around for so long, and you've reached your destination, and you are now in your home. This is your father's home. This is your home. You have arrived. That was the feeling of the Morley, and I was really feeling that that was the case. And when I came up in front of Baba, because they put me in front of Baba to get some drishti and some toli, and Baba asked me, where are you going? I said I was going back to Australia. In fact, there was a small centre there in the beginning, in those days, that had been started by a brother from London, John Kane. In April of 75, he tried to start a centre in Canberra. It didn't work, and then he went to Sydney. And so my idea, I said to Baba, I'm going back to Sydney to help in service. And Baba said, yeah, you will, he said, you'll find a bouquet of souls and bring them back here. And of course, I didn't know what that meant, a bouquet of souls. Had no idea what that meant. But anyway, it was like a blessing. And then again, I went back after that. I remember sitting in Baba's room again, trying to understand what it all meant. And I was just very determined to get back to Sydney to help in the service, because I knew they had very few hands. But that feeling of not just Baba's drishti and Baba's loving concern, because it's, when you meet Baba personally, you have no idea what the feeling is like unless you do. There's no way you can describe it. It's like this soul knows me 100%. It knows me much, much, much more than I know myself. And he knows all of the bad things that the soul has done and all of the good things, and it doesn't matter, He just has love, unconditional love. And so the feeling of Baba's drishti is absolutely unconditional love, and you get that too, even from the Morleys that you see, the ones that have been filmed or videoed. and Baba's giving drishti, and you can see when he comes out, so absolutely blissful and loveful that he is. And when he sees the children in front of him, he just sort of melts for us. So I guess if you want to increase your feeling of love for Baba, of course, conversation, heart-to-heart conversation helps, but really have the experience that Baba's drishti is on the soul. And I had a surprise when I got back to Sydney, because soon after I arrived there, the brother from London wanted to go back to London. I must have been, a week after I arrived. And then another week later, there was a sister there with Didi Nirmala in the centre, was Sister Suman, and she had to go back to Europe. Actually, she was being called to help the service in Frankfurt get started. So she went to do that. And then another week later, like sort of 3 weeks after I arrived, Didi Nirmala called me and said, I have to leave now because my visa has expired and there are no students here. So I want to ask you if you can keep these things until I come back. And I said, okay, sure. I mean, I had nowhere to keep them, but except my father's garage, let's say, and I hadn't been living at home for 5 years. So I thought I could keep them there for a short time, but then I had to see what to do. Anyway, everyone is looked as if, I felt suddenly abandoned. There were a few people who were finishing the course, and I kept the contact with them, and I finished giving them the course, even though I'd never done the course myself. But Baba was so, was so filled in the soul, and I was so conscious of Baba's drishti and Baba's help that he wanted something to happen through me. And so I was just so inspired. I remember in the early January 1976, we did this sort of bhatti in a park near my Lockie parents' home, which is, they lived in Sydney, at the edge of Sydney, bordering a national park. And there was a big river in the park. And so I found this big rock overlooking the river, and that's where we had our sort of yoga bhatti with the people. There were about half a dozen people, I guess. And we were sitting there for hours just meditating. And there was such a feeling of Baba helping, Baba giving love, and Baba wanting something to happen in Sydney, that it was not going to die just because Sister Didi Nirmala went. She said, keep these until I get back. And she only came back 3 years later, actually, except for a short visit once. But so I just wrote to Daddy Prakash Mani. In those days, she was the main person. Daddy Janki was still in London, apparently, with visa problems. And I wrote to Daddy Prakash Mani that I was going to use the things that of the centre. It was all some books and tapes and, cassettes and some old furniture. So it wasn't really very much, but it was probably enough to furnish a very simple house with very simple furniture and beds and stuff. There was, I think, 2 beds. So 3 beds, actually. So I said to Daddy, I wrote to Daddy without even waiting for a reply, telling Daddy that I was going to start a small centre just to see how it went, because I had to keep the stuff somewhere. And Baba's help in those days was so profound and so like palpable. So you could almost touch it. It was like that he was wanting things to happen, and I was the only one around that could make it happen at that time, because no one else knew about Baba. And the nearest centre was like Singapore or somewhere, like 10,000 kilometers away. and you couldn't really make international telephone calls, and letters would take a month anyway. So it had to be getting some instructions from Baba to develop things. So I had this feeling from Baba, not just loving Drishti and the welcoming into the family and the feeling of him being both the mother and the father. If you think about it, no one else can be both a mother and a father, just God. Any other, if you take it onto a human level, the same person as a mother can't be a father. And so we started this incredible journey. And it was like Baba was the main guide for service. I was very much yoga, because in the first year anyway, until Daddy G actually came to Australia in 1977 and realized that we didn't even have Murli in English. And from that time on, she made sure, because Genti Ben came with her in 77 to Australia. So Daddy G realized that we had no Murlis in English. And so she made sure that everything will be organized from then on through London, and that Murlis would be translated and they would be reproduced and sent out by mail. So until then, we didn't have even that. So can you imagine? I had this feeling to get something happen. There were no Murlis. Incredible yoga. We would, in those days, we'd sit for like 3, 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes. Because we didn't really know what else to do. And just people start to come along. And it was pretty soon, I think, even after 3 months, we had to change the center. It was too small. And we found a bigger house and another house next door where I was staying in the center, and I'd kept I had a narrow strip of veranda for my bedroom, because I wanted to give the maximum part of the house for Baba's service. And we also had a brother's house next door pretty soon. So there was quite a few people coming along. But the main source of inspiration was our yoga rather than the Murli, because the only Murlis we had were by Charlie stayed on in London until 77, he came back. But during the whole of 76, we were sustained by Brother Charlie's Murli notes. And such, this for me brings me to the second source of love. One is being able to recognize Baba and his qualities and his titles. Let's say lately Baba's been talking a lot about Master Almighty Authority, that we are Master Almighty Authorities, because Baba is the Almighty Authority. And so there were so many experiences that Baba's power was around, that he was not just loveful, but he was a source of real power to get through situations. So though I didn't have in fact, until now, I've never been in a place where there's been someone more senior than me around. I've always had to take charge, so in a way, but in a way my feeling is that I'm not in charge of anything, but Baba's in charge. Actually, Baba's love is in charge. So that to have that experience really helped to make things smooth. But I remember in those early years, Baba gave so much attention to the double foreigners. In fact, we were, in the first few years, we were just foreigners. Then I guess in the early 80s, he invented this word double foreigners, just to distinguish us from, first of all, we're all foreigners here in this world because of coming from Paramdam, and double foreigners because we're not Bharatwasis. We're not born in India. So he called us double foreigners, and he gave so much attention. I think the brothers and sisters, I guess in February, early March, practically all of the meetings were with the double foreigners, and the other parts like October, November, December, and January were and April were for the Barawasis. But during the February and March, mainly the double foreigners were there, and Baba gave so much attention, so much love, so many meetings, so many times we met meeting. And I guess it's because of that attention that we really took on a lot, and we could do, we could do wonders. It weren't our wonders. And then later on, I was only after 4 years, Daddy G calls me, and she's sitting there with Didi Manmohini, and they asked me if I'd like to go to Brazil. They'd received an invitation from Brazil, and it was actually a contact that I had made while I was in India. This fellow had been at a Hatha Yoga conference, and he became interested and wanted to do something in Brazil. And then after the Hatha Yoga conference, I took 3 people from that conference to Madhaban to see things. So one of them later on sent this invitation, and then Daddy, he wanted actually a sister to go there, but because he was living on his own, like a bachelor, and he would be inviting some sister who was also unmarried. They probably thought it wouldn't be such a good thing, so they wanted to send a brother. And so it came to me, and they asked me, and again, the next day Baba was coming, and I remember meeting Baba in Baba's room. Can you imagine the vibration in the Baba's room? Was still pretty small. There, Baba was meeting about, I guess, 15, 20 people maximum. It was pretty squashed, but then I went to Baba and I said, Baba, you want me to go to Brazil? Actually, I said, you want me to go to South America? And Baba said, yes, you go. So can you imagine how you feel when you get a direct instruction from Baba to do something? Any special instructions, I asked. He said, yes, be loving, be friendly, because those people won't like just talking about principles. You should be loving and friendly. Then they'll come close, and then they'll understand the principles. So Baba was giving these very, very good clues about how to do service. Don't push the principles, be loving. And I think if so many things happen, and over the next few years, Baba must have met me about 10 times, giving different instructions about how to do things. So you can imagine how you feel if you know that not only Baba's asked you to do something, Baba wants you to do something, but he's there for you. He has so much love for us. And then you see that working, then how can you not develop love? How can you not increase your love for Baba? The feeling that Baba knows you, the feeling that Baba knows what you're going through. And I often tell people this, that if it was still those days where Baba met people personally, he would show to every one of us, that he knows where we're at. He knows what we're going through, and he knows what challenges we have, and he's there to help us. He has our back, let's say. They have that expression. And so this idea of course, if you want to increase love, you have to do it through the different relationships, not just to be fascinated by his qualities and his titles, his attributes. That's also a way to relate to God. That you want to understand his peace, you want to understand his power, you want to understand his love, and you can have a sort of an interaction with Baba around his qualities and even his attributes, like he's the intellect of the wise, for example. It's an attribute. It's like a title that he has. Well, he's the almighty authority. It's a title. So I can experience the meaning of those titles, and I can experience the qualities by having that sort of a connection. But if I really want to increase my love, it has to be through the different relationships. And because each of the relationships has two sides, Baba's the father, but I'm the child. And if I just think he's a great father, but I'm not a great child, that relationship won't work. Baba's the teacher, fantastic. He gives such incredibly deep gyan, but that means I'm the student. But if I don't put into practice what I'm being taught, then I'm not such a good student after all. So there are two sides to each relationship. And they're like the whole thing of Srimad. And of course, and the other side of Srimad is obedience, being obedient to Baba's instructions. For example, take a very basic instruction connected with love. Baba says you have to be Nyara and Pyara, means you have to have a detachment, but a detachment filled with love. So Baba's talking to me, not for anything else except my own development. And of course, we have to understand what that detached love is all about. And Baba's way of loving us is detached love. He's so loving and he's so unaffected by what we're going through. He knows that love will win through in the end. And he knows that all that souls need is love in a way. But explaining this to others is not so easy. I remember, in fact, yesterday I returned from Chile, where I'd gone to celebrate our 40 years of service in Chile. And if you know, Chile is the furthest place from Madhavan. There's no place further in terms of getting to Madhavan than Chile. It's right at the end of the world. And I remember how Baba picks up on something that makes people feel so honored, so wonderful. So the Chileans were meeting Baba once, the very first group, I think. And someone said, they are from Chile. And if you look at the way the country is, it looks like a long Chile, but that's, of course, Chile is not related to that, the hot thing that we sometimes like and sometimes don't like. And so someone said, Baba, Chile looks like a chili. And Baba said, no, it's number one. It's a long country, a couple of 1,000 kilometers long and not very wide, only 60 kilometers wide. It's just one long country. And so the Baba said, no, it's not a Chile, it's number one. So I see how Baba picks up on anything, and he just makes people feel so grand. So Baba talks to us firstly for ourselves, and he knows that we have to become detached in the right way so that we can love in the right way. And I remember I was in Chile, I told this story there, very funny. I was explaining exactly about this in a public talk in the center in the early years, and I was talking about detached love. What was detachment, what was love, and what is detached love. And of course, very difficult for people to understand because love and attachment are almost synonyms, even the way that it's expressed in their language in Spanish. it's attachment and love is almost the same word. Anyway, I was explaining everything, and at the end of the talk, everyone left, and someone had left their shoes. Someone had not had come with their shoes and left the shoes there, where everyone puts their shoes when they go into the classroom. So there was a pair of shoes there, very good shoes actually, but someone had become so detached in the wrong way that they'd forgotten their shoes. Anyway, this detachment filled with such deep love is something that helps me. Because if I'm not detached, I can't really have the love that for God that I need to have. So if you think about, okay, you want to have a decent conversation with Baba, you want to churn the things that Baba's telling you, you want to understand the jewels that Baba's giving you. But if you're not able to live in a detached and loving way, it's becoming very difficult. Baba's teaching me how to remain detached from those around me, even including those that are very close to me for any reason, like family members. And Baba shows us the way he loves. He's so overwhelmingly loveful, yet at the same time so unaffected by what we're doing. So Baba shows me how to be loving. And if I'm not loving in the same way that Baba's loving, then it makes it difficult to me to have a better relationship. In other words, how can I increase my love for Baba if I can't increase my detachment for others? It's very difficult. Even, for example, you were reminding us of Anthony in the beginning. Wow, what a soul. But even then, you know, Baba teaches us that even when such souls pass on, they go on. It's because they probably have a more important role somewhere. And so if they go for this important role in God's task of establishment, then we give the permission for them to go. We're not only sharing our love, but we're sharing God's love to support them in this onward journey. And I mean, in the pandemic, even here in Brazil, so many left the body, Brahmins even. In the country, it was like the worst disaster. There was almost 1 million people. You can imagine, almost 1 million people left their bodies in one country. In the city of Sao Paulo, can you imagine, in one city, 100,000 people died. Everyone knew someone. And it was pretty disastrous. People were saying, oh, it's not so big, not such a big deal. My God, there was one brother, only 40 years old. He had to be in an induced coma for 3 months. And he lost when he got out of the coma and came back. He was only 40, completely healthy. But he got this virus and that was it. But he lost one lung in all of this story. So what kept him alive? Even he told me, even in the coma, he was sort of semi-conscious. But what kept him alive was Baba's love. So Baba, by showing us the bigger picture of things, he helps us definitely, because the world needs love. It's through, okay, I can develop love, I can increase my love through having a better conversation with Baba, by having a better connection and understanding his attributes, experiencing his attributes and qualities, and then improving my side of each of the main relationships, like father, child, teacher, student, guru, follower, or disciple. I can improve my love through each of the relationships by doing my side of the bargain. But I think where it all comes to fruit is in serving. Because Baba gives us an image of the world. Baba shows us the big picture. And we can see from the scenes of the drama that things are not so great. And yet he says you have to take benefit from the scenes of the drama and continue as an instrument. You know, last night we've been doing some programs here to let's say inform the Brahmin family about what's going on in the world. So we get people who are contacts or even Brahmins to talk about, for example, artificial intelligence, what it is, to inform our teachers what's going on in that world. We get someone from the environmental field to explain to us what's actually happening with climate change and so on. What are the issues? So we help. And last night we had one sister who is also a psychologist. She was a very dedicated BK, but at the moment she's absolutely famous and she's gone that way. But she wanted to share her understanding what prosperity is. And of course, she talked about prosperity as a sort of a, you know, the way to make the law of karma work for you, you know, in a sense. But naturally, she didn't look at it from the unlimited point of view, because the greatest expression of our love is to become an instrument for Baba's service of the world. And he certainly showed us how people are suffering, how and what's going on in the world and what's going to get worse in the world. And we are like the lucky few, because we are God's instruments. We are the ones that actually know who God is. People don't even know what the soul is. And so there's a lot of confusion. And even lots of strange ideas being shared on the internet about soul, about God, about this and about that. All of the ignorance that is circulating around, in fact, is all due to not knowing the soul. So if we practice soul consciousness, we can help others. Even if I just become soul conscious, I'm actually becoming more useful to Baba. And in that way, I will have a right over his love. What does it mean to do what Baba says? Is that it brings me closer to him, and I have a right over his love. So if I ask myself the question, how do I increase my love for God? The first answer is I increase my love for God, practicing soul consciousness as I go about my duties, because that brings me closer, brings me in contact, and keeps me open to receive his qualities. So if I'm not soul conscious, how can I be his instrument? And it's such an important role that we're playing at this time. Baba has prepared us for these difficult times. And these difficult times are now with us. So when we hear the news of the world, even the news of India, we know that these are the times in which we have to play active roles as instruments of God's love. Who can help the people at the moment? Who? I remember in the early days, that was what inspired me. In getting back to Australia and suddenly the centre closing down and I'm there alone, I knew I had to do something. Because I knew that if I didn't share with people what I knew, which is like Baba's given us incredible knowledge as a trust. He's entrusted us with this knowledge to give to others. And I knew that if I didn't do it, until someone else would come and do it, because everything shut down, right? I was the only Brahmin in Sydney at that moment. And so if I didn't do anything, who knows the next time someone would get the inspiration to come there. So I thought, no, let me do something. So Baba shows us the state of the world, but he shows us also that we are part of what the answer. And if people are in such a state because they don't know the soul, basically, it's due to not knowing the soul. And because they don't know the soul, they don't know God. So if I just practice soul consciousness, I'm coming close to Baba. I can help others. I can connect them also. So this is the most important role we can be doing at this time. And who can help people? You and me. And how much can I do or you do? What we can do is to connect souls with God, and that's a simple thing. It's not so complicated. I'm remembering as I was sitting here thinking about what to share with you. There are 3 words that Baba uses in Hindi. One is Vanan, which means to hear and speak, which I've just been, we hear what Baba says and we share Baba's knowledge. But I can only do that if it's followed by Manan, which is like Vanan is hearing and speaking, but Manan is revising the knowledge in our minds, revising the points, churning, in other words. And the 3rd word is Magan. So Vanan, Manan, Magan. Magan means to be lost in Baba's love. So obviously, there's a connection, even because they rhyme. So I'm hearing and I'm speaking, I'm doing service. I'm thinking about all of the significance of what Baba's giving, and I'm appreciating it even more. But all of that brings me to a state where I can just be lost in Baba's love. So the first thing is to understand Gyan and share it. Okay, fine. Even understanding Gyan, for example, people wonder about the 5,000-year cycle. And yet we know it because we've got that recorded in us. Okay, the numbers are not so important, 5,000, 4,000, 6,000, whatever. But the fact is that the cycle is recorded in me. We have the memory of the whole thing in us. So when I'm listening to knowledge, I'm actually stimulating what's already recorded in me. And even when I'm talking to others, I'm talking to something that's already recorded in the other person. And that's why I guess if we get into that sort of frequency in which I'm connected with Baba really, and I'm feeling Baba's presence, then naturally I can touch that thing that's important in that other soul that's recorded there forever. So hearing and listening and churning and understanding brings me closer to Baba so that I can share him with others. So that's the ultimate indication of love. If we've touched someone else's relationship with God, and that's actually what service is. I'm trying to touch what that soul has with God and bring it to life. So, if we look at the big picture too, Baba's there to help me personally and everyone else to transition from Kali Yuga to Satyuga. That's basically. And we are here to do that. So one thing I wanted to show you, I'm not sure how much time we have. I guess, yeah. What I can do is to do an exercise, and then we can open up for any questions that you may have. So, a minute, my pen dropped. Just a sec. Okay. So I've got here something very simple. Just basically, there are three things that's here in this little diagram that you can see. Baba, me, and others. Sometimes our relationship with others sort of interferes with our relationship with Baba because I give it importance or it becomes too big for me, some difficulty that I may have with others or whatever. So that sort of cuts my connection with Baba. So Baba has a lot of love for me, and Baba has a lot of love for everyone else. Now you can see the arrows from Baba to me and Baba to others. You can see it in this sort of simple diagram. The problem is between me and others, which will sort of interfere with those other things. So if I just remember, let's just do a simple exercise. So everyone's sitting nicely, sitting in a relaxed way. Just put yourself in front of Baba. Baba, actually, because it's a subtle experience. The very moment you invoke, Baba is there. Baba is present. And so just feel how much love Baba has for the soul. Think about all of the times that Baba just showed his existence and helped us. Even today, he said, if there's courage, there's help. So by understanding what Baba wants me to do, I may have developed courage, and Baba's help was automatic. So I'm just sitting and I'm in front of Baba and I just feel Baba's light. Okay, maybe drishti if you want, but I can feel Baba's light being absorbed into me. Baba has no restrictions with the soul. Baba's just giving so much love to me. Okay. So let me think of a few others, people that I live with, even other Brahmins especially. Why wouldn't, especially Brahmins, why wouldn't they have a similar relationship to Baba as I do? They're also sitting in front of the same Baba and they're feeling also so much love. Baba's love for me and Baba's love for anyone else is not different. It's the same love. So I'm just imagining, okay, Baba's the focus of my relationship. Baba's the focus of my attention at the moment. Baba's right in front of me, but imagine how many other Brahmins there are, even indirectly, the devotee souls. They're also experiencing love from God. Neither more nor less. The same. Baba doesn't give more love to me and less love to someone else. It's the same love. He's the ocean of love. So let me be aware of that. Okay, I can have my own personal relationship and I can fill up my own store of these spiritual experiences. But everyone else has the same right. Why not? Baba's love for me and Baba's love for everyone else is the same. Okay, first question. Is my love for myself the same as Baba's love for me? And if not, why not? Is Baba's love for me and my love for myself the same? It should be. Baba sees the soul. Baba sees all of the virtues of the soul, all of the possibilities of the soul. And he has so much love in spite of anything that may not be 100% correct. Baba knows that if he gives love to what is right in me, I also have to give love to what is right in me, to the extent that what's not right in me, what's wrong in me still, it becomes irrelevant. So let me have that high vision of myself that Baba has. Okay, let me think of someone else, some Brahmin who's close to me. Maybe someone with whom I have some differences of opinion or differences of perspective. Now, I try to imagine that soul's connection with Baba. That soul is in front of Baba. And Baba is giving the same that he gave to me. Baba is seeing the virtues and qualities of the soul in spite of any weaknesses that are there, because he knows that those strengths will help the soul overcome any weaknesses. So Baba's love for that soul, why is my love for that soul different from Baba's love for that soul? In the same way, why is Baba's love, my love for me and Baba's love for me shouldn't be different? Baba's love for anyone else and my love for these same people should be the same. Because after all, love is the same. It doesn't vary. It's the same Baba to me, Baba to anyone else, and me to me, and me to others. Should be the same love. It's only one type of love. And it's a love based on knowledge. It's a love based on understanding. It's a love that has no limits. So why cannot I be universally loveful? Why can I not be like Baba? Why can my love not be like Baba's love? So just think about how valuable it is. Let's come back now. Just think about how valuable it is that what Baba's given us, the knowledge that is given us to share at the right time. And we know that it's the time to go home. Soon we can say that more openly, I'm sure. But what we can talk about is what God can do for people at this time. And because we've had this habit of speaking and listening for so many births, it's not really just a question of listening and speaking. It's not just a question of, churning what and getting to the deep meaning of what Baba says, but we should be getting to that state where we're immersed in that love, because the Baba once said, "I am loving because of what I know." So it's knowledge that makes him lovable. He knows so many things that the only conclusion that he can come to is that he has to be loveful. So we have to start sharing that experience, sharing that sort of happiness. And this will bring the return that Baba wants. This will also protect us from Maya. So let's experience Baba's company. Service comes and goes, but I have to go deeper than just programs and stuff. I have to have that deeper inner state where I'm actually, my love for Baba is so strong that I'm protected from any sort of ignorance and confusion. Then I can really say that I've reached the meaning, the deep meaning of knowledge. So anyway, I mean, I was just sharing some thoughts here.
We cannot hear you. Your mic?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah. When I opened the chat, I turned off the microphone. If somebody's asking, there's a question in Greek that I don't understand. There's a question in Spanish that I can understand. How can I perceive God's love constantly that my Mercury doesn't fluctuate, that I'm actually becoming more beautiful? Well, a lot of these things are subjective, of course, so it's very difficult to be objective and subjective at the same time. But if you wanted to know how much Baba's love is influencing in your life, you can just see how easy it is to get along with anyone else. If you are loving like Baba is loving, then you'll get along with others. People's behavior won't matter. Doesn't matter what people do or what they're like. You stay stable. Then you know that Baba's love is operating in you. Somebody's asking, were you aware of the test that Baba gave you? What kind of test did you have, and how did you recognize this? Yeah, I guess so. Especially after I got to Brazil, can you imagine? I came here, all I had really was Baba's love and Baba's blessing. I had nothing else. Baba said, go there and be friendly. That was my instruction. I didn't think about how will I survive, because I had had such an experience of Baba's help in those early years of service in Australia, where when I left, there were already four big centres functioning. And I had had a lot of experience getting things going and organising programs and stuff. So I guess in those days, I'm talking about the late 70s, there weren't many foreigners who had had experience of getting service going. So I was pretty confident in that way. If you think of it in the logical way, it's completely out of the question that you go off to the other side of the world. I confess that I'd never even heard of Brazil or South America before I came here. I had no idea. And when I arrived in Sao Paulo, which is the biggest city in South America, and that's where the brother was offering to help for 3 months. When I arrived here, I just had $200. That was it. And I couldn't speak a word of Portuguese. And it's not that people speak English here at all. Because the small group that was there to receive me, they spoke English. But I figured that I had to learn the language very quickly in order to serve, to do anything, to be useful. So the first tests were related to getting used to the culture, I suppose. It's like the difference between Latin Americans and Australia is the same distance, the same differences between Australia and India. It's very different. The culture is very different. It's a totally Catholic country, Brazil. And so people are very religious, I suppose, but quite open in a way. But nothing really works here. I was used to everything working so, like the bureaucracy in Australia is very easy, but here it's very complicated. And so there was a bit of a cultural adaptation to do, and to learn the language and to start to interact at that level. There was a lot of tests. But I guess Bubba was watching, because every time I went back to Mudabine, Bubba would say, yes, this is happening and this is happening, and you should go. He said over, say, 6 or 7 meetings, said, you have to put the local people in front as soon as you can, because they know the country, you don't. You will always be a foreigner. Keep yourself free, move around, create a strong center like London, but don't get tied down to one place. Keep moving around. And then Bubba said to me once, and this was very surprising, and it really gave me such a lot of intoxication, that Bubba said to me, I came up in front of Bubba, and he said, oh, you've got visa problems, don't you? And I went, what do you mean? How do you know? I never told anyone. And Bubba said, yes, you have. He said, you have visa problems. It was true. Every 3 months I had to leave the country and go to the border, cross the border, get my passport stamped and come back again, because I had a tourist visa. And then Bubba said, no, don't just, then he said, don't just go to the border. Then I would say, but Bubba, how do you know that I just go to the border? Bubba said, Bubba's telling things that he knew, he could see. He has his television, and he says, I've got this television, I can see things. For me, it's absolutely true. So Bubba said, go to the capital cities of these nearby countries, get contacts going, get the service going. So in a way, Bubba got the service in South America happening just through instructions like that. And then, of course, if Bubba's giving me something, a task, literally giving me a task to do, that will be a real test for me, because if I don't do the task, I fail the test. So it's incredible to have that feeling that Bubba knows what you're doing. Someone says, does the conversation between me as a soul and Shiv Baba work, or should it be through Bapdada? Yeah, in a way, it's because there's no conversation in the soul world. If you want to have a conversation with Shiv Baba, you can do it through Bapdada. You don't have to see Brahma Baba's subtle form. Just if you're having a conversation, it's a subtle experience. Just know that Shiv Baba's using that subtle medium so that there can be an interaction at a language level. Somebody is also asking, just let me see here. Okay, yeah.
I think there are no more questions.
Somebody's saying it's very useful, and it's certainly true that we have to listen to the Murli and to churn it. We have this, somebody just commenting, it's not really a question, just commenting that we have this abilities already, in the ability to listen and to churn the Murli is already installed in us, installed in us forever. It's true. I have to activate what I did last cycle. So if it's part of the equation, to have a conversation, I mean, to develop, to increase love, I have to have a very good conversation with Baba, like regular. Secondly, I have to have a really good churning ability so that I can understand and make sense, deep sense out of what Baba's telling me, because that then becomes also fruit of our interaction. Somebody's saying, how can I maintain or sustain the intoxication of Baba's love all day? Well, I think if you create a fairly solid foundation in the beginning of the day and just keep, I think there's traffic control that Baba's given us since the 80s actually. It wasn't there when I first came along, but then it came up in the 80s. It's an incredible yukti to keep your check on how you're going throughout the day, because what you have to do basically is to keep up the same intoxication they had when you listen to the Muli. You just keep on checking it to see how it is, and checking to see if you don't get caught up in things like during the day. Just check. Somebody else, and don't want to say anything?